Welcome to the Fantasy Formula One podcast. I am Paul. That's Ben. Thank you for joining us on this podcast where I forgot what it's called. It's dealing with.
Oh, we use fake money to buy real race teams to win imaginary points. There it is.
I need more coffee. Sorry about that, everybody. But today we got a lot going on. So welcome back from vacation.
Thank you.
Off.
Yeah, I was out.
Missed a crazy race.
I missed the best possible race. So yeah.
But we will talk about numbers and stuff on this. So we're going to do a DNF report. We're not going to go play-by-play through the race like we did last time, but we're talking heavily about it. So we're going to talk about a DNF report first off. So for DNFs, everybody in Formula One right now has a DNF or two, except for three drivers. Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, both Ferrari, and Oscar Piastri. Everybody else has DNF'd something. So...
And to be clear, because as he was saying that, my mind was going like, well, wait, what about Sainz with his appendicitis? That's not a DNF. That's just he did not race at all. So.
Yes. How many? The question I have for you is how much should DNFs factor in now that everybody has them? Yes, it's easy to say, okay, Ferrari, absolutely, they're doing great, no DNFs. Fine. Both Red Bulls have one. Oscar Piastri is the only other one who doesn't. Everybody has a DNF.
Sure.
So as soon as everybody, if everybody has it, so how big of a factor does it continue to play?
Well, yeah, I think it's a huge factor in it. And of course, we're looking at everything under a microscope during the opening weeks because, everyone's starting at zero. So those first few races, you're seeing a lot of impact. It's inevitable that everyone's going to DNF either for a mechanical issue or a crash that they can't call or be responsible for, or in some cases, reckless driving. That's ultimately what it comes down to is everyone will get one. So yeah, don't panic if your driver has one, but start looking at the frequency, start looking at the causality. If
for sure,
we thought this would be Daniel Ricciardo's redemption year, and so he's had so many bad races due to circumstances that were beyond his control. Yeah. As opposed to any number of other drivers that are either driving recklessly or are coming out of a turn too late or just having that flash break in their judgment.
Yeah.
Those are the ones you have to start watching for. It's why are you DNFing, not did you DNF?
Yeah. No, and that's a very good way to look at it. And the frequency. So Jogan Yu has 2, Logan Sargent has 2, and it's so weird. So like Logan Sargent has 2, Lance Stroll has 2, Daniel Ricciardo has 2, Alex Albon has 2. And as soon as but Jogan Yu, his 2 DNFs, those were absolutely we've talked about in the past. Those weren't his fault. He didn't crash into stuff. It was his team's fault.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily his fault where Logan Sargent, I don't remember what it is, but we're very quickly much faster to point out our countryman, love you dude, Logan Sargent, and not his team, where it might be the other way around.
So, yeah, I guess there are 2 major DNF liabilities. One is, do we not trust your constructor because your car was poorly made or poorly put together at the last minute, or are you a bad driver?
Yeah.
And otherwise, there are a myriad of other possibilities to get a DNF that are I'm not going to sweat too much about. No. But if it's one of those 2, like right now, I don't trust Kick Sauber. No problem with Jogan Yu.
Yeah.
Right now with Williams, it's kind of a toss-up for Sargent for me, just because they, I know they've had a part shortage or a repair shortage or a chassis shortage, or they haven't had the time or the parts to do right by their cars.
Yeah.
But also Logan Sargent doesn't have the best track record as a stable driver.
For sure.
So I'm not sure which is worse for him right now on that front.
But the takeaway I'm taking, and it sounds like you agree, is that, and you said it even, is to just okay, look at why they're DNFing.
Correct.
That they DNF.
Yep.
As soon as you're Sergio Perez and suddenly you get into a 3-car pileup in Monaco with 2 Haas's, is that Perez's? I mean, I want to get into that. I promise we can. But whose fault is that?
That one talking point alone is 5 different conversations, because you could talk, well, is it Perez? Is it Haas? Is it specifically Magnussen within Haas?
Yeah.
Or is it Monaco being basically a single lane parade of cars?
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of discussion to be had there.
The next discussion point is interesting stats. So now that I've run all the statistics, I'm actually up to date on everything.
Okay.
I ran the points per million for the 1/3 of the races we've completed, the 1/3 of the sprint races.
Yeah.
Total. And I ran the stats for the 1/3 of the actual Grand Prix races that we've raced.
Mm-hmm.
And some interesting numbers is that, so Max Verstappen's just so the points per million you get on the fantasy website are both of them put together, right? It's per weekend.
Yes.
As soon as you separate them out, Max Verstappen's point per million is 0.95 for Grand Prix. He's under 1 point per million.
Oh dear. Okay.
Yeah. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz are 1.3 and 1.2
points per million. Okay, and they cost significantly less.
Cost significantly less.
So you're getting so that points to you're getting. You will likely get around the same amount of points right now for 22 million versus 30 million.
Exactly, counting on the points per million.
Correct.
And again,
yeah, based on that.
Yeah, and remember, there's also, and this is for all you people out there, like you can't, as soon as you have, a guy who's worth 1 million and he's worth 7 points per million, that's still not going to win you the championship. You need those. You need the guys bringing in double digit, 20, 30 points per race, because then you're going to double up on them. Yeah.
As opposed to, you might have you might have Logan Sargent who's getting 1.5 points per million, but he only costs $6 million. So that means you're getting 9 points total if he doesn't crash.
Exactly. If he does,
right.
Then when he does crash, to your point, it erases the last 3 weeks worth of gain.
Right. And we've hit on this point so many times, but those lower cost drivers are essential to your team, but you're picking based on minimized liability as opposed to adding to your point total.
Yeah. And to juxtapose all that, in just the 2 sprint races, Logan Sargent is the points per million best sprint driver at 1.12. Max Verstappen has 0.54 points per million in the 2 sprint races.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So a possible lesson learned there is if you've got your pocket change money as you're putting together your team for the week, you got to ask yourself, is Logan Sargent worth it? And one thing that might tip the scales in his favor is if it's a sprint weekend, because he could bring you some points in the sprint even if he DNFs during the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So he has brought in 13. So Logan Sargent has brought in year-wide 13 points in the 2 sprint races. In the Grand Prix, he's brought in 6.
Cumulative.
Wow.
Okay.
All 8 Grand Prix races, he's brought in 6 points. Over all 2 sprint races, he's brought in 13.
Interesting.
Yeah, just because he crashes in the sprint race.
Sure.
The Grand Prix.
In the Grand Prix, yeah. Or he's only getting maybe 2 or 3 or 4 points throughout the season, and then one DNF wipes all of that out. So
Fernando Alonso, negative 21 points in sprints.
Really?
For the year. Over the 2, negative 21 points. In Grand Prix, he has 98.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so he has a positive 0.75, which is respectable points per million for Grand Prix.
Yeah.
But he has a negative 0.64 for sprints.
That's wild.
So, and there's only a sample size of 2. So all you statisticians out there, feel free to leave comments. I appreciate it, but I understand with a sample size of 2, it's nothing that great. But when we only have 6 sample points for the entire season, you have to look at what you.
Yeah, that's 1/3 of the sprint season.
Yeah.
So, and like we said before, 2 data points is enough for a straight line. So
absolutely. So those are the 2, and we can go into it as the seasons progress. I'm going to continue to dive more into it. But just with looking at the 2 of them, as soon as you separate the sprints from the Grand Prix, you get 2 very different results as per what kind of points these drivers are putting up, who's good, who's bad. Joe Gonyu, 0.88 points per million in sprints. Yuki Tsunoda, 0.92 points per sprints. However, Joe Gonyu only has 13 points total. Yuki Tsunoda only has 18 points total. Logan Sargent only has 13 points total. Max Verstappen, even though he has 0.54 points per million, 33 points in the sprint races. So he has more points. He has more points than any 2 other drivers at least, but his value is only half of them points per million because he's so expensive. But you have to have him and the Leclerc and. But yeah, Leclerc's 0.38. So I'll quit talking numbers. Sorry, that was just the interesting thing.
That's
at some point we'll do it.
That's fine. This is actually really fascinating when you look at the tried and true background here. That these are the questions you have to ask yourself when you're putting your team together, and this data really shines a light on that. So no, it's good stuff.
The next thing I want to dive into is unpopular questions supported by stats. So since you were out last week, I was unable to bounce a lot of the oh my gosh, what just happened off of you because you were rightfully so incommunicado. So I came up with a couple things that I'm going to pose to you as a question.
Sure.
I want to see completely unvetted, completely unprompted. I want to know what you think of them. Because for me, looking at black and white, in the fantasy game, I love the numbers. The numbers don't lie, but they also kind of do lie.
Sure.
So,
well, you know what? I'll tell you something else.
Yeah.
Numbers cause not the numbers. The questions brought up by the numbers, they cause people to have feelings.
They do.
So again, while I was out, I visited our social media, and usually it's pretty steady. But there's one reel that got generated that questioned the dominance of Max Verstappen. And you know what though? It wasn't like you weren't calling him out. You were just asked. You're thrown out into the ether. Hey, is this cause for concern with Max Verstappen? And people had thoughts and feelings, and they needed to shout back, and that kind of blew my mind a little bit, because again, you weren't you weren't nailing anyone to the cross. You were just saying, hey, this is interesting, right? And so that was fascinating. so that's a little bit of the background on this segment here. I'm interested to hear what you're asking.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Is Charles Leclerc a better fantasy driver than Max Verstappen?
No.
Well, I might agree. However, and this is not, and I double-checked this. This isn't me. These are not my, I came up with these exact same stats, but I would check their website right now. Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen both have the same fantasy points of 264.
Do they really?
They are tied. Max Verstappen.
Reverse that.
Max Verstappen is $7 million more expensive than Charles Leclerc.
Okay. But
Charles Leclerc has the exact same fantasy points as Max Verstappen.
So do you have available to you what that translates into in terms of points per million?
Yes. So again, I will go. This is going off of their. These are their numbers, right? I can quote mine, but I want to make sure I'm giving the people what. So Max Verstappen's points per million total, as per the official Fantasy Formula 1 website, is 1.08.
Okay.
Charles Leclerc's fantasy points per million, 1.4.
Really?
Yes, like a solid 30%. A solid 0.3. 30% more than Max Verstappen.
Well, and again, so I think people will jump on this as well. People will say though, well, that's also because Max does have one DNF, and Charles Leclerc is one of the two who does not. And so again, a negative 20 points for an entire race when it's Max really, really matters.
It's actually like an 80-point swing. If he's supposed to get 40, and then if Max Verstappen should win and he gets 40, but then you 2x, you get DRS, so that's 80.
Correct.
And then instead of 80, he ends up getting negative 20. That's 100 points
swing there.
Swing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. So yeah, that makes a difference. But that is, again, data wise,
it's right there.
Yeah. For 23 million, you're getting 264 points, and you need those heavy hitter drivers.
Yep.
And you want to have flexibility on the back end of your driver lineup. Yeah, you go Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, and Carlos Sainz is splitting him at 1.17.
Oh, interesting.
So as per the statistics, as per the official numbers, Max Verstappen is third in driver points per million behind both Ferrari drivers.
Interesting.
And if you look at the total numbers scored, Max Verstappen is still about 60 points over Carlos Sainz, but he is tied with Charles Leclerc.
That's wild. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not so in the actual no kidding drivers championship in the real world drivers championship.
Oh yeah, Max
169, Charles Leclerc 138.
Which again is when you're talking the upper tier of drivers here, that's not too far off. That's a lot.
Race.
That's a lot closer than I would have anticipated.
Yeah. One more if Max Verstappen crashes out or finishes last.
Yeah.
And Charles Leclerc wins. They will be tied.
They're going to flip.
They're going to basically virtually be tied. It won't be exact, but you get 25 points. You get 10 points for
and you're talking actual.
This is real
points.
Real points. Real world points. You get 10 for qualifying first.
Yeah.
And then you get 25 for winning. So that's a 35 points. If you qualify first and win, you get 35 championship points in the real world.
Right.
And in the real world, let me click back over here. In the real world, Max Verstappen is only 31 points ahead of Charles Leclerc.
Wow. Yeah, no, see that's a lot closer than I anticipated. And you still think, 30 points, that's huge. It is if you're Williams and you're celebrating just scoring your first 2 points of the year this last week, sure. But if you're Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, That's not too far.
And we're not saying, just for everybody out there, we are not saying that Max Verstappen has lost a step. We
No.
are not saying that he is not the strongest driver winning everything he's been going. No, we're not saying that at all. We're pointing out the fact that it's one race difference in the Drivers' Championship if something goes wrong with Max Verstappen.
Right.
And that's nothing. It's unlike the previous year where it was Max Verstappen could put his feet. He won the championship like 4 races from the end or 3 races from the end,
Right,
or something. The next unpopular question that is supported by statistics, and this is only in the fantasy world, is Ferrari better for your fantasy team than Red Bull Racing
as a constructor.
as a constructor? Now, I understand the prevailing wisdom is, and what's driving it is this. The prevailing wisdom is that you have to have Ferrari and you have to have Red Bull because that's where all the points are.
Sure.
McLaren's rearing its head.
Yeah.
And McLaren's on the rise, and Oscar Piastri and Sergio Perez are neck and neck in fantasy points, and Perez is, and both Lando Norris and both Oscar Piastri are catching up
Sure.
with everybody else.
Yeah.
So the question has to be, since we're only allowed 2 constructors, is who are your 2 constructors?
Right.
And this question is, statistically speaking, in only the fantasy world, which is better, Ferrari or Red Bull? Because there's a non-zero chance that in the next couple weeks, the smart move is going to be to drop one of them to get McLaren on board.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think the prevailing, or the common sense wisdom, or the baity nature of this question is to say Red Bull is the stronger.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think that's probably going to be incorrect, and I think what we can look at is the driver disparity. Just because you look at Charles Leclerc and you look at Carlos Sainz, they are consistently hovering in that 2nd to 5th place bubble.
Yes.
Whereas you'll have Max in first and Perez, he's gotten his seconds. It's they've had some double podiums, but there's also been Max first. Thank you, Perez
Yeah,
6th, 7th.
Yeah.
And that disparity leaves it to Max to keep Red Bull as a dominant constructor. And so if he has an off day,
yep,
you're out of the game.
If whatever the race is, whether it's the track, whether it's the weather, whether it's the car,
right?
Since both, in theory, both cars on any team are similar. As soon as whatever goes on makes Max have just a top podium day but not win,
yeah,
then that means Sergio Perez is so far back it's almost not a factor.
Right.
It's almost a liability. But concurring with you, both Ferrari and both McLaren, I mean, within reason, they're pretty neck and neck.
They are.
So
they stay close to one another. It's interesting. Red Bull is the top tier. I can't. I'm sorry. I shouldn't make any declarative statements here. I see a lot of parallels between Red Bull as a top tier team and then Aston Martin as a mid tier team in terms of difference in driver positioning.
Completely.
Where you have Alonso, 2-time champion, and then you got Lance Stroll, who's typically maybe 5 to 7 spots below him in a race.
Right now, and here is my declarative statement, which I'm not trying to do, but for me, looking at these numbers right now, Red Bull Racing, absolutely, it has 599 fantasy points.
Yeah.
Ferrari 554, McLaren 388. All right, so they're a little bit behind.
Sure.
However, and McLaren has been steadily in the 40s and 60s and 56s. But if you look at Red Bull, where Red Bull got all of their numbers, in China they got 126, Japan they got 108.
Okay.
And in Bahrain they had 89, and Saudi they had 90. Then in Australia, where Max had his brake fire,
Yep.
32.
Correct.
In Italy, when things didn't go their way for Perez, it's up 61. In Monaco, 8.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that to say that, yes, when both the drivers, to confirm everything we just said,
Right.
when both drivers are doing great, man, you can't touch them. As soon as it's Max only, then you're at best treading water. As soon as they start behaving like everybody else in the world,
Yeah.
and they lose their superpower, as soon as it's Clark Kent running around fighting with his fists and not Superman, then they're a waste of money.
Yeah. No, so yeah, I think you could look at, if we're going to get comic book nerdy, it's like Red Bull is maybe Superman and Jimmy Olsen. You lose Superman, Jimmy's not going to do, I mean, he might take a picture, but you know what?
Yeah.
So the world's not going to get saved. I think if you have a constructor, I think any losing one driver is going to be catastrophic, no matter what constructor you pick. But it's going to be a lot more lopsided if you have Red Bull and you lose Max.
Absolutely. That $28.8 million that Red Bull costs right now going into Canada, Red Bull costs $28.8 million. Ferrari costs 23.1. McLaren's 25.5. So as soon as you get rid of Red Bull and put in McLaren, you save yourself $4 million.
Yep,
and that's enough to get a better driver.
Yeah, and
not saying doing it.
No, but and if you look at teams on the rise over the course of this season, yes, McLaren is 388 points, which is significantly less than Ferrari. But if you look past them, Mercedes next with 291, and then Aston Martin with 146. So McLaren's in their own world right now, and they've separated themselves pretty significantly from the pack below them. And they're on the rise. They're doing well. You're regularly seeing some orange on that podium.
Yep. And as soon as you start seeing both orange on the podium, as soon as it's both orange and both red fighting with Max Verstappen for the top 6.
Yep.
And now suddenly Perez is maybe top 6, and that means Perez is doing good to be in top 10.
Yep.
Then that'll change all the fact. That'll change the calculus for Red Bull Racing.
Yeah, and cumulative totals are important to look at, but also you have flexibility from week to week. So whether they are the top team throughout the season or the top constructor throughout the season or not doesn't really matter depending on their performance from week to week.
So here is, I used to, at the start of this podcast, I would do 3 race and 5 race averages.
Okay.
To kind of judge that. But it
I
ended
like
up being
that,
just
yeah.
a lot of up and downs, and
Sure.
I could just look at it. So over the last 3 races for Miami, Italy, and Monaco, McLaren had 50, 64, and 56. So that's 170 points, unless my gorilla math is off.
No, you got it.
All right,
no, actually you did.
50,
Yep, 170. You got it.
170 points over the last 3 races for McLaren.
Okay, let's look at Red Bull.
For Red Bull, we have 85, 61, and 8.
So 146, 154. Yeah.
All right.
So over the last 3
Over the
weeks,
last 3 races, yeah.
McLaren's gotten more points.
McLaren's gotten more points, and they're $4 million cheaper. And Ferrari, I know we keep Ferrari on our team.
Sure.
But for Ferrari, 79, 51, so that's 130, plus 68.
198. They're topping out.
Over the last 3 races, the smart money, the 2 dominant constructors have been Ferrari and McLaren.
Interesting. Over the prevailing knee-jerk reaction wisdom.
Yep. And will it be that way in Canada? Who knows? Hopefully not.
Exactly.
But because I still have Red Bull on my teams,
I
haven't made the shift to McLaren yet.
And again, we'll talk a little bit, go a little bit into the background of the Canada's race course here in a little bit. But this is where every course is so different, and it really, really matters. And you can look back at Monaco and say the race took place during qualifying because this is the first time in history you had the top 10 drivers not significantly change position throughout the entire race. So where you qualified is essentially where you ended up unless you crashed.
And this is, again, not to go back to Monaco, but because of the red flag, the rules don't say you have to have a pit stop. This is one interesting thing about Monaco. This is a rule update that we kind of stumbled on here. I used to always think that the rule was you have to have a pit stop because you have to change tires. You have to run 2 different compounds in every race.
Yeah.
That equals a pit stop.
Sure.
Lap 1 in Monaco, 2024, they had a crash, multi-car crash, 4 cars out. So all the cars, when they red flagged, were able to go back to the pits. Everyone was able to change tires.
And then they never had to pit again if they didn't want to.
So you had a bunch of drivers, like the top 10, all put on hards, since they knew if they went to the pits, they come out of the back of the pack and never pass anybody.
Right, you're not going to pass anyone.
So everybody put on hards, and no one tried to pass anybody because it would burn up their tires trying to pass them.
Or you'd pull an Ocon and get penalized. Yeah. Well, and again, I think further speaking to that race in particular, it's rife with tradition and history, and it's beautiful, and it's Monaco, man. But as a race, you look back to when Daniel Ricciardo won it, when he was with Red Bull, he had I think significant mechanical issues, but he was in first place at the time he started to have those issues, and all he had to do for the last couple of laps was keep Vettel from passing him in order to win.
Really?
Yeah. So, it was a really cool win. I think this was it 2018, 2019, but if having those issues and doesn't stop you enough, and all you have to do is stay out on the track or on the course and drive defensively, I don't know. Does that mean we need a change in Monaco?
the change that I heard somebody throw out on the internet, or maybe it was one of the drivers, I forget who, is introducing the mandatory pit stops in Monaco.
Okay.
So you have to, no matter what, everybody has to go to the pits once or twice or 3 times.
Gotcha.
Enough that pit stop strategy. So then at that point, everyone's racing soft tires. Then at that point, I will go ahead and burn up my tires to get 3 points ahead, because then I can get that 10 seconds, and then when I go to the pits, eventually you have to go to the pits too.
Interesting. Okay.
And that's AID. I don't know. I'm no F1 strategist.
No, but I think that'll be really interesting for the 2025 season to see what they do, just based on the level of drama that that surrounded this year.
You're not, to your point, you're not going to get rid of Monaco.
Yeah.
You won't not go to Monte Carlo. Excuse me. You won't not go to Monte Carlo. Herbie went to Monte Carlo. Like, everybody goes to Monte Carlo, right?
Yeah.
Come on. People who don't know anything about racing know about Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
So
no, absolutely. So it was everyone loves it, but I think after this year, everyone's like, oh, that's Monaco. All right. Yeah. So
the next segment is all yours, actually. The overheated takes.
Yeah.
From Ben.
So here's the thing, a couple weeks ago we introduced the Pander Express segment, which was, we realized we got a lot more hits just because we vaguely mentioned Taylor Swift, and it's just the funny thing about social media and trying to increase that exposure. So again, we want to keep this content full of substantive conversation. We want to talk about actual theory and actual strategy, and really just celebrate all that is racing. Because it's awesome. It's this amazing world that is hard to find anywhere else. However, sometimes you want to extend that reach a little bit. So this is our little corner here. So we noticed that we got a lot more visibility when we said something controversial, even though again it was not controversial. You asked a question about Max Verstappen's dominance, but I'm gonna just dive headfirst into controversy with some obscenely over the top hot takes about each constructor. First of all, Aston Martin. You know what? I'm gonna look right into the camera for this. Lance Stroll is a significantly underrated driver who's actually much more capable than I don't think we give him enough credit.
Nice.
So I figured we'd start off strong here.
Absolutely.
All right. Overheated take number 2 with Red Bull. If you really think about it, I know we just disproved a lot of it with the whole points total thing, but Perez is actually the one carrying Red Bull. Max wouldn't be Max without Sergio Perez, because maybe people are focusing on I can't actually defend any of these.
Well, but you need. I mean, that's interesting though, because as soon as who else is going to be blocking for him? Who else is going to be that other Red Bull that slows everybody down to get to Max, right?
There
as soon
it
as
is.
it's a big drag race, as soon as it's a big drag race, open air drag race trying to get to Max Verstappen, no, you have to have somebody who's willing to sit there, because you saw it. I saw it on one of the races. I forget what it was, but it was right out of the chute. You saw Perez and Max. They were 1-2.
Yeah.
And they went, and as soon as Max got the jump on Perez immediately came in behind him and then went out again to try and defend other people from coming around him.
No, that does happen. And again, I'll say, McLaren has a strong team dynamic as well. Yeah. Haas has actually come out of the doldrums because of their strong team dynamic driving.
Yeah.
Just saying.
No, all right. I like it.
And on Haas, you know what? I think there's a lot of potential that the FIA is actually slipping Magnussen some money under the table to keep him so he can keep things spicy by building up all the penalties and messing up other people's leads. I
could see it, because if you think about it, when was the last time a driver actually got so many penalty points so fast that he was facing a race ban? Somebody did mention this on the social medias, that all a race ban is one race. And then you have to do like a safe driving course and you get reviewed and whatever. I made up that last a little bit. But basically, once you get over 12 points or more, then you get your little ban.
Okay,
you get a one race ban, and it's not good, and there's probably other stuff that goes along with it. But yeah, he racked up points so fast, and we're talking about him. Who and why did he do it? He did it to be a team player. So now here you have Kevin Magnussen, who is suddenly becoming the bad boy in F1, trying to
I'll tell you, man,
throwing elbows, helping his team, and now everyone's talking about, is he going to get a ban or not?
WWF has their, like in wrestling, you've got your faces and your heels.
Yeah.
F1 needs a heel, baby, and Magnussen's stepping up.
Love it.
All right, Kick Sauber. Hamilton should actually back out of Ferrari to join this up-and-coming powerhouse. They've got Nico Hulkenberg coming on board. Sainz passed it up. I think Hamilton, he's jumping on the wrong horse for Ferrari. he could do great things in Toxic Sludge Green.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it would be unexpected to say the least.
It would be, and he would be able to mold it in his own image.
He would.
What would a team, what would a team like Kicksauber or Audi do if somebody like Lewis Hamilton, you said Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton suddenly is like, hey, I want to win another championship with you guys. Let's do it in 5 years.
On one constructor, you're one of a stable of drivers, with a famed history, but you're just Ferrari red. On the other one, it's Team Lewis Hamilton.
It's Team Lewis Hamilton.
So he should rethink that. Williams, just a rumor, but I heard that Alex Albon's hotel room the night before the Monaco race, his AC went out, and so they kicked Logan Sargent out of his room and let him stay the night in Sargent's room. Ferrari, they ought to bench Sainz for the remainder of the season so Ollie Behrman can get some experience because Sainz is out, and he could be a liability to Leclerc because he wants to win. So
that's true. Ollie Behrman would not. I say Ollie like he's my friend. Like I know him. Ollie Behrman. Okay, cool. Ollie Behrman would not risk bumping into any other car. He's like, nope, I'll take care of this. Ferrari, just like it's my very own.
All right, baby RB/V carb, actually an ideal landing spot for Carlos Sainz. Because he's saying no to everyone else, but also look at Yuki Tsunoda. They've brought in 3 or 4 different drivers to be the primary for RB, and he ends up outperforming all of them and outlasting all of them. You put Carlos Sainz on RB, Yuki Tsunoda becomes a star.
That's true.
He plays up to his competition every time. So
the stats support that.
So Carlos will still be Carlos, but now Yuki Tsunoda will be insanely good.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Then you got McLaren. Norris's recent success is actually a fluke and purely circumstantial.
I know there's based on all the social media hits we've gotten recently,
right?
There's a lot of people out there who would agree with you.
And so again, I'm more than midway through this. Thanks for bearing with us, but I'm going to throw out the disclaimer here. These are obviously insane hot takes just for fun. So we haven't lost our minds here. But Alpine, Ocon should have actually been rewarded for his competitive spirit at Monaco. You don't see a lot of people really going for it these days, and I think a little bit of recklessness can be a good thing. I think we took the wrong lessons away. And with that, now that we know that Ocon's being let go at the end of the season by Alpine, Ocon should get the vacant Mercedes spot that's being left by Lewis Hamilton. Ocon, he's represented by Mercedes. He's been managed by them since 2021, and so I think it could be a natural fit.
And he's good. Look what he's been doing in an Alpine. Imagine if you put him in a Merc,
he is still the points leader for the Alpine drivers.
Yeah, if you want somebody good to fly form up and fly wing with George Russell,
there you go.
Absolutely.
So those are my horribly irresponsible hot takes.
Oh, but it's interesting to think about some of those options.
Sure.
Imagine Ocon at Mercedes, I think it would do great because if you put not anybody in a Mercedes car, but as soon as you put Esteban Ocon in Lewis Hamilton's car, is he going to do worse than Lewis Hamilton's doing now?
Right.
Yeah. Dang.
Again, look at Valtteri Bottas. Sorry, he's got 10 Grand Prix wins.
Yeah.
The dude's a racer, but he's in a Kicksauber car.
Wah, wah.
It's and that is the reliable fallback discussion point for anyone who's talking F1.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if he had this car,
car,
that
it'd be different.
Yeah. So how can we not talk about that?
This is what we're here for. So I'm all about it.
They should have one Grand Prix per year. That they do a lottery system and everyone switches cars or something along those lines. I think that would be phenomenal. Just because that way you get Logan Sargent crashing a Red Bull, you get Charles Leclerc in a Williams car, that'd be fascinating. I think everyone and their mom would watch that race.
And the pre-race or the warm-up lap would be what you had mentioned earlier at the beginning of the series, where you take the regular people and put them in an F1 car and just see if they can make it around a lap.
Yeah.
So they would get a whole bunch of white, unmarked Formula One cars.
Oh, you mean? Are you talking about like the whole the everyman Olympic?
The everyman
thing?
Olympic
Yeah.
thing.
Okay.
So the first field, 20 white unmarked Formula One. Okay, fine. Formula 2 cars. We don't want people to die.
Sure.
Formula 2 cars out there. Put just random people from the stands. Put them in there. Give them a helmet so they don't die.
Right.
5 lights out. Go. Watch no one make it past the first turn.
Oh no. Yeah.
Spend the rest of the afternoon cleaning up all the debris, and then bring out the actual drivers in the mix and match cars and just say go.
That would be incredible.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Near the end, we will talk about Canada.
Yeah.
Is there what do you have? Any thoughts about Canada? I haven't done too much research into the track. The online presence has been saying that it's very similar to Monaco with limited passing and stuff like that. I don't know if that's true.
I don't know. See, I don't know about track width. It's a lot straighter of a course. There are some turns, but it's nowhere near like Japan was.
Okay.
And a lot more straightaways. So that'll be interesting.
It's not yin-yang at turn 1 and 2 and stuff.
No. There's it still does turn because car tracks are a loop.
It's kind of
but it's not the sexiest course ever. F1's been racing there since 1967.
Okay.
It's French Canadian
Oui.
territory, so it's Gilles. Bienvenue. I'm sorry.
What happens when Americans translate French?
Yeah.
I took Spanish, so
on Notre Dame Island.
Oh, okay.
It's been at that location since 1978, and this is in the Montreal portion of Canada.
Gotcha.
Most wins ever at Canada is Hamilton with 7.
Okay.
And for constructors, Ferrari has won the Canadian Grand Prix 14 times. Track length is 4.36 kilometers or 2.7 miles. Total race length is 305.27 kilometers or 189.7 miles.
Okay.
It still hits me every time. These cars are so fast, but they do have such a long drive. It's 70 laps.
That's
they
don't need gas for it. Like
you're driving these cars so hard for so long. It's insane. Like that's that level of the sustained intensity and high speed performance. Like when you get a car going, or like you find a straightaway, even with your like regular person car, and you're like, let's just gas it. You get to that top speed, whatever it is, and then you like back it down. These guys are like pushing their cars to their limit for like an hour and a half,
and then walking away from it, like still standing. Oliver Behrman, did you see that? It was a picture that surfaced after he ran his race. But the headrest area on his Ferrari was dented in from where he would pull the G's in the corner, and his helmet would crinkle in the carbon fiber or the aluminum or whatever it is around him. Yeah.
That can't be great for you.
No, well, I mean, especially if you're not used to that pulling that much. He's just like, grr, and I'll grant maybe it was a bump, maybe it was whatever.
Sure.
But visually, the story was that due to the G's, his head was crinkling and stuff.
That's wild. And then again, like we're no spring chickens. We both hit 40 this year.
Yep.
So like that really makes you think. So okay, for those of you who are listening who are under 40. Every decade has its issues with but everything hurts. You still feel young, but everything hurts just a little bit more. And for no reason, like you're gonna pull a muscle in your neck because you sneezed wrong, And so to see guys like Fernando Alonso still doing this for a couple more years, that has to wreak havoc on his body, And like Hamilton too, he's been around, he's coming up on that same age. It's incredible what they do. It's like go to NASA space camp for a couple of weeks,
right?
And that's what they do for 6 months a year. Yeah, they're partying in like rich Europe for in between there, but even that you can't do when you're 40 anymore. Everything slows down. Right. Anyway, so 70 laps. Last year, the 2023 the fastest lap was actually Sergio Perez with 1 minute 14.8481 seconds. And then podium was Max at number 1, Fernando Alonso at number 2, and Lewis Hamilton for 3rd.
Fernando Alonso number 2.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was back last year. This time was before McLaren was doing well. I think
Aston Martin.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no. Were you talking?
Sorry. I was seeing Lando Norris. My bad.
No, you're good.
Okay.
No. Fernando Alonso.
Alonso. My
this
bad.
was he was still with Aston Martin at this point.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mixed.
And this was early enough in the season where after Lawrence Stroll rolls out, he's like, "We are Aston Martin, and we have Fernando Alonso," and they actually had a strong start to the season.
Yeah, they did.
It petered off in the second half, but that's also where McLaren started to heat up because I think at this point last year, McLaren was still not doing so great, but then those upgrades came through, and they were like, oh wait, no, McLaren's a thing again. So
which, man, and then they jumped on it earlier this year, which is great. RE, everything we just talked about.
Yeah, no, it's exciting.
The last thing we talk about before we call it is the driver market.
Yeah,
we already touched on it, but Esteban Ocon released a statement that he and Alpine are parting ways amicably at the end of the season.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's them replacing him or if that has anything to do with the crash that went on.
I mean, it's got to be them replacing him because right after the race they know there will be consequences.
Yeah.
So
and there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and I fully acknowledge that there's a lot we don't know. But correlation, causation, I don't know. But yeah,
it's interesting though because now you have this is what's bizarre is I think Haas is becoming the constructor to watch in terms of new drivers because you got Hülkenberg now going to kick Sauber, which is going to be Audi, and they still have an open seat as well. But I think they're going to be clearing house. So I don't know what's going to happen to Zhou Guanyu or Valtteri Bottas. And then you've got Kevin Magnussen, who was probably planned to be their stable veteran, but he's on the he's not too far off from getting his license suspended. So who knows if they're going to hang on to him or not, or if he's in the hot seat. You still have that empty spot in Mercedes.
Yeah.
And now Alpine has an opening as well. Are they going to keep Pierre Gasly, or are they going to clean house and start somewhere new?
I think it's. I mean, and again, this is I think you clear house.
Okay.
I mean, just hit the reset button because your team. The only logic I would say to keep any team around, and this can be devoid of F1 or not, but as soon as you're not progressing the way you want to, you replace your bad parts or replace what isn't working.
Yeah.
Or if maybe you're just like, you know what, none of this is working, Control-Alt-Delete, and kind of start with a fresh document sort of thing.
Sure.
At least, but, I mean, don't worry, I want to see Logan Sargent hang around. But
so say Alpine keeps Pierre Gasly.
Okay.
Who's been also
Williams. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No,
team's right. Sorry.
No, you're fine. But again, Williams is another discussion point because they're keeping Albon, but nothing about Logan yet.
Yeah,
I think he has the rest of the season to prove himself. But I think there's definitely a movement to move on from him as well.
But Alpine, sorry.
Oh, sorry. If you're Alpine, do you say you keep Pierre Gasly? Do you consider Valtteri Bottas as your stable veteran who's been around, who's got some wins under his belt? But
I think you have to, because I think Valtteri Bottas, he's proven he's willing to be a team player.
Sure.
He's proven he's willing to take the Fernando role and be like the mentor
on
his way out. He's willing to not get those wins while he works towards wins.
Okay.
And I think he's a buckaroo. He's a hot dog. He's got that personality.
He does.
That makes people like him, and he has the chops to do it. You just got to give him a car where he can make it happen.
Sure, he's got the star power, but not necessarily the ego.
He's willing to put on a mullet and have that be the first thing you see on your F1 intro, right? And what I was thinking when you were talking about Haas is I think you put Bottas on Haas with Kevin Magnussen.
Really?
You just have a couple gunfighters out there.
Would you keep Magnussen?
Oh yeah, I think. How about this? I think. Hot takes here. I think you put Bottas and Magnussen out there with Haas, and you know that you don't try. If there's a gap, they're going to put their nose in, and you could either crash or you can give it to them.
Gotcha.
And I think when one of them has a chance to win, you know that you pass the other one at your peril. Sort of thing. Like these guys, not necessarily in that like they're going to go and like crash everybody.
Yeah.
But as soon as you have somebody like Bottas and somebody like Magnussen who kind of they race their own race.
Yeah.
You know. And if you're Haas and you're wanting to progress yourself and the next step in evolution could very well be, hey, we're here to stay. Here are two guys that have a pedigree. They know what they're doing, and you know when they come to pass you. Yeah, they'll be smart. They're not going to be dumb.
Sure.
But you know they're also not going to be what's the thing? The saying here in the United States is the meek shall inherit the earth, but they have no place on roundabouts. Right? Because
I've never heard that one.
Something I got from my big brother Sean. What's up, dude?
Yeah.
Is that like in when you're in Europe and when you're abroad, there's massive roundabouts.
Yeah.
And as an American, we're not used to that, so we're like freaking out.
You just go.
There's like 1 and 2 lane roundabouts like around, and you're like people are stopping, using the stoplights, not sure what to do. I think I see a car. Let's wait.
Yeah.
Meek will inherit the earth, but they have no place in roundabouts. And I think that as soon as you have a Haas with Kevin Magnussen and Valtteri Bottas, you have the pedigree. You know they know what they're doing. You just got to give them a car that'll do it, and they're going to be willing to go out there and, as far as F1's concerned, throw elbows
Sure.
to get to the score.
See, here you make a lot of good points. I think the one I disagree with, though, is yes, they both have the pedigree, but I don't know how much they know what they're doing, because Magnussen early on did have issues.
Yeah.
He calmed down for the first half of this season, and he's working well with Hülkenberg, who I know they had beef before and they've gotten better at it, but he's racking up a lot of penalty points early on.
Yeah.
So
sure.
What I'd like to see for Haas next year, Valtteri Bottas, and then let's get Ollie Behrman a chance.
Ooh.
Then you've got that true mentor-mentee relationship. Behrman has shown in one race that he's got some chops.
Yeah, give him a Ferrari, he'll get you Ferrari results.
Right.
After one race, he's still in the top,
he got P7, I think.
P7, yeah. And so he's still like not off. He's not on the bottom of the Drivers' Championship after one race.
Right.
Give him a Ferrari, he'll get you Ferrari results. Give him a Haas, man, any evolution you take with that Haas, he's going to capitalize on.
Yeah, and and maybe he can start to do a thing where he proves, maybe he proves he's outperforming the vehicle that he's given, and that gets him a chance elsewhere. But I think that's a great starting point, because again, the kid's also going to be 19 years old for the 2025 season.
Right.
Otherwise, a quick question:
yeah.
What do you think about Sainz with Alpine? Because he's also running out of teams that he hasn't said no to.
Ooh.
So I think maybe Carlos Sainz, and maybe hang on to Pierre Gasly, because again, he's also at a point in his career, he's still a very, very young guy.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much he should need a mentor relationship anymore. He's been in on the grid for a couple years now.
Yeah.
So
I would say, yeah, I think for Pierre Gasly, I think and I'm not sure I think he's a solid journeyman. Like, he knows what he's doing. He could still benefit from the knowledge and experience of a master.
Sure.
But he is but he knows
he can race.
He can race.
Yeah.
And man, as soon as you put Sainz there, shoot. Because if you're Sainz, you would go to Alpine if you're, first off, they're making you the lead driver.
Yeah.
And they are going to fashion the team about what you want. And if they pay you enough.
Sure.
And they're going to give you a long enough contract.
And I think those are the big key factors there. But again, he's already said no to Kick Sauber, who wanted to make him their figurehead. He's not going to go to a Williams.
No.
And he's not going to go to Haas. And
so you have to be. If you're Sainz, are you holding out for something you know is coming, or are you holding out for something really great, or is there a specific niche you're looking for?
Right.
Or you're holding out for money.
So unless he's getting the offer from Mercedes or from Red Bull, but didn't you just post something that did they extend?
Oh yeah,
Sergio Perez.
They extended Sergio Perez by 1 year, and you don't have to be too much in sports to know 1 year contract is
a prove it. Yeah.
Is a prove you still belong here sort of thing. We're not changing stuff. Red Bull's not changing what they're doing.
Yeah.
That is a signal that they're going to go into 2025 with the same team, and they're going to continue the evolution.
Right.
Because 2026 is new regulations. The
that's
formula of Formula One changes for 2026, and everybody kind of hits the reset button.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's a big thing to look at.
So as soon as you're keeping Perez, you'll keep him around to keep going with his car because you know what he can do and you know what he can't. But as soon as all the cars go to change, do you really want Perez around?
Right.
Maybe you do. I don't know. But that's why they didn't go past 2025 with him. That's my guess. And that's why Perez wanted a 2-year contract. So that way they'd have to create the 2026 car around him.
Okay.
But if they're like, nah, I don't know, well, then they can continue putting everything else into the 2025 car, and then any steps in evolution are taken for the new 2026 when they rebuild from the chassis up. From the tires up, they have to rebuild it. They can do it for somebody else.
Okay, well, then that to me makes Alpine seem like a kind of a cool landing spot for Carlos Sainz. He's a clear number one driver.
True. Yeah.
Lower mid-tier. Like it's things will with him there, things should only get better.
Yeah.
But again, maybe the same thing was said to Valtteri Bottas when he went to Kick Sauber, and look how things have been going. So,
yeah, no, that's true. All right, that's all I have. Do you have anything else?
No, I'm done with my speculating for the week.
Perfect.
We'll see y'all after Montreal, and in the meantime, please do all the like and subscribes and shares and reviews for us because we need it. Thanks for hanging out. Take care.
Cheers.